Now, you've probably never heard of him, and even if you have, you're even less likely to have seen him on television. But Mark Textor has been described by those in the know as one of the most influential political strategists and pollsters to walk the planet. For almost 3 decades, Mark Textor has been channeling public opinion to his political masters. He identified the issues that John Howard used to drive a wedge between his opponents in Australia with slogans like,
"We will decide who comes to this country."
And
"This election, ladies and gentlemen, will be about trust."
It's helped win Howard 4 elections and won Textor a worldwide reputation.
Oh, yeah!
Journalists down under call him the suburban whisperer, the man who reminds politicians of what real Australia thinks.
People are still stuck in traffic. They're still paying higher electricity bills. They're still worried about the security of our borders.
I now look forward to forming a government.
The policeman's son is credited with the astonishing rise of Tony Abbott, Australia's current Prime Minister. And he's been whispering in ears here too.
I will work as hard for Zone 6 as I do for Zone 1.
He advised Boris Johnson in the 2008 mayoral election campaign, creating a strategy which reconnected suburban Conservatives with central London issues. His polling pulled in votes again for the mayor last year. His friends call him Tex. His enemies have more amusing names, no doubt, but his insights have pulled in business from most of the big industries, including mining, banking and big tobacco. He's more recently been going head-to-head with spin doctors of the Assad regime, helping the Syrian opposition get their message out. But he hasn't done it all alone. The other name on his company placard is Crosby, Linton Crosby to be precise. Hired by the Conservatives, Crosby's got his work cut out.
The only people he listens to are a small group of rich and powerful people at the top.
Fending off Labour's attack on Cameron as rich and out of touch, tackling the rise of UKIP, handling the coalition. And it's Mark Textor who does the polling for Crosby to turn into strategy. So come the next election, what will the Aussie duo be whispering into David Cameron's ear? And Mark Textor joins me now for his first British interview. Welcome to the Channel 4 News studio. It's a bit damning of politicians, isn't it, that they need people like you? Are they so out of touch that they need people like you to tell them what ordinary people think?
Well, the systems have become more complex. You know, it's not that there are less sensible media voices, but there are a lot more voices out there clouding what real opinion looks like. So it's becoming, I think the biggest change I've seen in the last 25 years is the difficulty in separating noise from suburban reality.
So you advise all these people to basically ignore the media, is that it? No,
I think that would be wrong. I think the media play a very important role in distilling the essence of policy and the political process. And one of the key things is the rise of the importance of competency. So if you don't know enough about policy or don't know enough about the deep personality insights of your politician, you go to the media to effectively tell you something about it. The problem has been that whilst the mainstream media is still doing its job, the sources of media have proliferated. And so it's harder and harder now to stick to the mainstream issues.
So the message... So you're the one who got Tony Abbott then focused on immigration, sending the boats back, on repealing the carbon tax in Australia. And what do we see now with David Cameron? A big immigration campaign, go-home vans driving the streets of Britain, and David Cameron talking about repealing green laws or green taxes. Well, are you playing the same game here?
It's interesting because it's actually a very, in a way, mundane process. The idea that somehow a political strategist or even a journalist or a political leader can insert artificially an issue that shouldn't otherwise exist in the community is absurd. It works in reverse.
You just think people think the same things here?
No, the colour and flavour and the nature of each issue is different. And there are a whole bunch of other issues in Australia that you didn't focus on. So Tony Abbott's main focus, for example, was the abolition of 2 taxes that he thought were hurting core industries. So it wasn't a green issue, it was very much an economic issue, and his focus was economic.
But you were also involved with Michael Howard's campaign in 2005, weren't you? And we saw again similar strong messages, saying it's not racist to talk about immigration. Similar refrains that we've seen through some of your campaigns.
There were other messages.
There were other things, but that was a
education
big
was
one.
On the billboards. Health was on the billboards.
But it didn't work in 2005, did it?
Well,
and why do you think that works better now?
Tony Blair was still, there was a slight negative overhang from the WMD stories, but he was still a politician at the height of his powers. There were a lot of extra votes won in southern England, and I think the Middle England and Scotland was still the challenge back then.
So you think Ed Miliband's easier to beat?
Look, every election is different. Every election should be, it's taken as a challenge and hard work. That's the only thing that wins an election is hard work.
But what do you think of him? What are you telling Conservatives about Ed Miliband? I know they're paying you and we're not, but I mean...
Well, I think as Linton Crosby, my business partner, often says, you don't signal a strategy to your enemies, and certainly, Britain didn't say, look, here's a bit of a teaser, Germany, about where we might land on D-Day. They very, very much keep those strategic secrets to themselves.
OK, but, well, I mean, Linton Crosby is a controversial figure in this country already. He's been in the news a lot, partly because of the lobbying suggestions that your company also works for tobacco, for big oil, for all sorts of big corporations. Do you not see that there's a conflict of interest?
Look, it's interesting to look at the timing of this. I think our winter, so your summer, it's all reversed. These matters first came up, what you call the lobbying controversy. Well, firstly, I very much doubt whether Mary Smith in Manchester have heard of Mark Textor, Linton Crosby, or the people involved. But it was interesting. So the Labor Party promoted this story in summer. Linton and your Prime Minister put out very clear statements at the time, which put it to bed for a long time.
But I bet your tobacco clients were delighted when the government changed its position.
But it was very interesting. When I train young researchers, what I try and say is, look, don't just listen to what people say, listen to the motive. And why was this alleged controversy brought to the fore by Labor? Because they fear Linton's organisational skills. So I just question the motive. Look, I've known Linton for 25 years and I've been in business with him for 10. At the core of Linton's personality is a bloke who plays politics robustly, but is...
But do you see why the ordinary observer would say, that doesn't look right to me? You're being paid by big tobacco companies at a time that the government is looking at tobacco policy and ends up changing its policy. You say you didn't talk about it, but, it smells fishy, doesn't it?
Well, it's interesting, because implicit again in that line of questioning is the assumption that Linton is a public official.
He's a paid advisor.
No, he's not a paid advisor. He's not paid by the taxpayer. He does not work in the civil service.
He's paid by the Conservatives, and he's an advisor, so he's a paid advisor.
He works for the Conservative Party part-time at the moment on political matters, not policy matters. And for those who have worked in politics for a long period of time, you realise that, policy is not thick on the ground.
But similarly, will your energy clients be delighted if David Cameron cancels green taxes and ditches all that hugger-husky stuff?
David Cameron and his team, and I said I've got a head full of Aussie politics and I haven't concentrated on domestic issues yet, but David Cameron and his team are going to make difficult decisions in the national interest. I mean, it's the opposite of politics. I mean, what they're doing now with cutting the deficit and trying to repay back the debt is obviously a very difficult thing to do. And that demonstrates a government that is focused on doing the right thing, not doing deals, alleged deals.
So you're glad
lobbyists.
to see David Cameron hardening up his image and ditching all that?
Well, I don't think it's ever... I think this idea of image, which is... I mean, I think the thing I have noticed about what we call the gallery bubble and you call, I think, the Westminster village, is they get very, very excited about words like image and positioning. But the best way to improve your image and positioning is to say relevant and salient. And I would guess that here, like the rest of the world, there's only three big issues. Your personal liberties, your economic liberties and your political power.
And on that, Mark Textor, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thanks for coming in.